Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast. This is the podcast where four psychotherapists, three of us Canadian, one of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I'm Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from the Vancouver, Canada area.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, also a registered clinical counselor from the Greater Vancouver area. I always get caught up on that. Anyways, yeah.
And I'm Chris Boyd, psychotherapist for the Vancouver area and Joanna's brother.
Hooray.
Well done.
Hooray. We've been doing this for many episodes now.
We have.
Is there an actual difference between a registered clinical counselor and a psychotherapist as far as Canada is concerned? Is that like an official designation, or how would you guys describe that?
That's a hot mess question.
Well, I think registered clinical counselor is actually our association, but we're all psychotherapists, right?
So
It's more of a general term, or more of an American term, actually, I think.
yeah, in BC, none of those terms are protected.
Oh, protected meaning
Psychologist is.
Psychologist is a protected term, so only if you're a registered psychologist may you use the term psychologist. So I can say I have a doctorate in psychology, but I cannot call myself a psychologist because I'm not registered with the college. So it's protected.
But isn't psychotherapist? Oh, go ahead, Brooke. Sorry.
But a counselor, a psychotherapist, therapist,
counselor.
all of those terms are, they're not protected.
So what you're saying is anyone can call themselves any of those terms, regardless of their schooling, training, licensure, whatever. They could just put it out there and say, I'm a counselor, I'm a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
I thought
we're trying to change that. There's like a group trying to lobby the provincial government to get that figured out. So in other provinces in Canada, they have a college and it is a protected term. But I think the term varies across the country. I think some provinces it is psychotherapist is protected.
Even, by the way, another little difference, USA, Canada, what you guys are calling your college, we just think of colleges as like a school of higher education, but your college is actually like a board or an association, right?
Yes.
That gives you your license.
Mm-hmm.
Governing body,
yes.
Yeah.
We also call a college like that's also a university or like a post-secondary. It's either university or college, so we have that too. So
okay, that just confuses things more.
Yeah, but there is a difference between a college and a university.
Yes.
When we're talking academics.
Which is what for you guys?
So a college is more community-based.
Okay.
Typically like smaller class sizes, like you're probably looking at averaging 30 or 40 students per class. Some of the big lecture halls, you might have like 100 or 150. And they're spattered throughout the communities, and they still need to have accreditation and those sorts of things.
Yeah. Are they 2 years or 4 or either?
Depending on the program, some are 2 and some are 4. And then a university is a major institution. Typically faculty is doing research there, and your class sizes for first year, second year, if you're doing a big lecture theater, you're looking at 300 students per class. So much bigger. But definitely the faculty, and then they can offer more programs. So colleges can't offer masters or doctorates. Colleges can really only do undergraduate degrees or other degrees or certificates. Universities can do masters or doctorates. So there's more persons with doctorates working in university as faculty. Yeah, very different.
Yes. I don't think here I am. I've worked as an adjunct in academia for many decades, and I don't know exactly what all the distinctions are here. I know that we have what we call community colleges or junior colleges, which are usually 2-year programs that give you an associate's degree, an AA. And then there are 4-year universities or colleges. And what I've understood is that typically a college is a higher, it's a 4-year institution or a regular college, not a community college or junior college. A 4-year college is one that gives out bachelor's degrees, but not necessarily master's degrees or doctorate degrees. Although there are some colleges here that give out like a master's in teaching or master's education, something like that. And they just maybe haven't changed the name yet because it's been traditionally a college for so long. And then universities tend to give out, more master's and doctorate degrees. But anyway, if anyone knows more about that, you can inform us. Write us at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com.
Yes.
Yes. Well, there we are. Also, back to the degree thing. Also, here in the States, psychologist is a protected term, and the other ones are not. So yes, people do have to kind of pay attention. Someone says I'm a counselor. Is there a license behind that? Is there training behind that? Because there might not be. And so I think a lot of people in the public, and again, I don't think that we do the general public many favors with all the different degrees that we have and all the different, programs, and then specifically to psychotherapy, all the different forms of psychotherapy we have. It's almost like someone has to have a degree in psychology just to know who to choose for your therapist.
I agree.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Kind of maddeningly so. So that's some of the problem. We'll talk sometime. We can talk more about we've talked about doing that before too. Like, what's a social worker? What's a marriage and family therapist?
Yeah. Art therapy.
Yeah, sure.
Eco-psychologist. Lots of things.
There are a lot of those things. We could be the educators right here.
Yeah. Faux show.
Yes, we can. So tonight is book club night. Did you know that?
Club.
I read it. I finished it. I finished the whole book.
You did it.
Way to go, Brooke.
Yeah. This one was much shorter than the first one. Very different from the first book.
Yes, very different. Quite different. But we'll get into that in a minute. But we're excited to be doing this book club, which means there's no ambush tonight. We all know the book that we're going to talk about, and we're going to discuss it here and give our thoughts and ratings and critique and all of that, right? Okay,
You
cool.
bet.
And then by the end of the podcast tonight, we're going to tell you what our next book club selection will be. Yeah. So hang in there. Even if you didn't listen to this one, you want to know what the next book is, right? Okay. Well, without further ado, let us introduce our book club.
Woo! Like, Joanna, are you going to sing? Oh, I think we're all waiting for it. All right.
Great.
Good.
That was wonderful. So, way to go, Joe.
Was that a saxophone?
That was actually Kenny G on saxophone. Came and lent his horn to our little. No, he didn't really. But
yeah. Oh, I was gonna say we just recorded it earlier today. Kenny and I.
Dude, Kenny. Oh yes, that was a rollicking good time. So that sets a nice tone for us to talk about the book, The Gift,
by Edith Eger.
Edith Eger, I believe.
Yes.
So shall we just dive in? Do we
want
to talk about it?
So Brian, I think I want to know what you thought, because a few weeks ago, prior to even our banter, you kind of let it slip that you definitely had some thoughts about this book, which makes me think you might be a little bit passionate about your comments. So I'm curious what you were going to say.
You want me to lead off with this?
I really do. I'm so curious, because I think this is going to be a good one. I think there's going to be a mishmash of feedback on this.
Okay. All right. Here now, this is kind of a delicate thing, because I have all sorts of respect for Dr. Eger. If we listen to her story, we haven't recapped her story, but this is a woman who grew up in Germany, Poland. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I read it, but she was a Jewish person in a concentration camp in Auschwitz.
Yeah,
in Auschwitz.
She was 16.
And she was 16 years old. She was there. She was there with her parents. She saw so many people die. She was there with. Just went through horrific experiences in her life.
And she was there right to the end until liberation.
Until liberation, right. She went on to become a psychologist. She worked with Viktor Frankl. She's done some incredible things. And now in her 80s and 90s, wrote these books, The Gift and The
Choice.
Choice, right.
So
the Choice and the Gift.
Yeah.
Choice is more autobiographical, right?
That's my understanding. I purchased it, so I'm going to read it on my own, not for book club, but yeah, my understanding is autobiographical. So
yes. And I'm just an amazing woman, no doubt about it. I actually watched her TED Talk. She has a TED Talk online that she just gave last year, like 6 months ago during the pandemic. Yeah.
Wow.
She was actually talking. It was recorded. It wasn't, of course, live because it was in September. But she gave a really nice talk about grief and about how we are to grieve and we're to feel in order to heal. Really great messages there. So in no way are my comments any knock on her life or her contributions to her patients or any of the world. So I want to clarify that.
And we also, again, there's objectively and subjectively.
Yes.
There's so many different ways to actually assess or discuss a book, right? Like there's pros, there's cons, and good disclaimer though.
Good disclaimer. Had to make a big disclaimer. Let's spend a couple of minutes disclaiming there, right? And another disclaimer personally, as a guy who has read dozens of self-help books and, works as a psychologist for a couple decades, all of that. There's my kind of personal bit too. So all of that to say, I found nothing new here. I found nothing new, nothing really all that captivating to me as a reader that was anything different from anything I've read before. So that's my critique. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that necessarily. This is maybe it's a good place to find a lot of thoughts and a lot of contributions from people in the fields, but there was a lot of stuff from Viktor Frankl, which of course we mention almost every podcast, which is great. I love Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning is one of my favorites, and but I've read that a few times, and there were many different points from positive psychology that were helpful. But I've heard them all before too.
So
and
subjectively,
I felt kind of like I felt a little bored, to tell you the truth.
So what if this were like a client who hasn't really been through therapy, or a general person who's not too familiar with psychology or these principles, so kind of just a bit more of a novice? Would you recommend this book to them? Do you think that this would be a good way to open some doors towards some concepts, or that they might learn some things?
I think it may be a good starting point, sure. But I can also think of 5 other books that I would recommend before that as a starting point, because I think they put it, they're better written and have maybe more comprehensive views of some things.
So what do you mean by that? By better written and more comprehensive views? Like what would you have liked to see more or less of?
Okay, so she does a great job of course, telling her own story, which is very captivating. And it makes me want to listen to The Choice as well, or read The Choice as well, because I think that's really the most, some of the most fascinating parts of this book are her telling her own story.
Yeah. When she really just like snapshots, eh?
Yeah.
Like they're like one little paragraph, like, and then cannibalism took over in the concentration camp.
Right.
Moving on to my next point. I'm like, okay, wait, can we like go, like, that was kind of a bit of a bomb to drop.
Yes. Absolutely. So, and a lot of the things that she brings in are like just kind of little platitudes that she kind of mentions, right? So when talking about grieving, for example, she talked about grief and she said, people oftentimes are saying, why me? Why me? Why am I going through all this hardship in my life? Why me? And she says, well, we got to just change that around to what now? What now? What am I going to do now? Which is a nice, not why me, but what now? I love that idea.
Mhm.
But that's just a matter of just kind of snap out of it, kind of buck up and face reality.
Mhm.
It's not a lot of psychological sophistication to a statement like that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mm.
So maybe I'll jump in there a bit. I really like the book. And I'll
Great.
tell you why. I do agree. I think she captures a lot of ideas from maybe other theorists or psychiatrists, psychologists like Viktor Frankl and Carl Rogers, and she kind of names who her big influencers were.
Yep.
One of my impressions when I was starting to read it was that she's very, very direct, and so she makes in psychotherapy and counseling, often we got to be very careful about being direct with clients because there's so much subjectivity there. So maybe a couple of her statements, I would kind of question that a bit, but I think it kind of worked because of who is delivering it. So Edith Eger, you mentioned her story is compelling, and that's absolutely true. If I wrote a book and rehashed all her ideas without sharing her story, it wouldn't be a very compelling read, right? But the fact it's her being that direct with her clients and tying in her story with it, I think it kind of works for the right person. So I think there are some clients out there that would actually find this very valuable, right?
Mhm.
Imagine
Yeah.
that, sitting in a counseling office with Edith, and she's telling you, hey, you got to look at yourself when it comes to dealing with this abuse, or hey, you got to move forward. You got to find a way to find meaning in the suffering, capturing some of the Viktor Frankl's work. That would be pretty impactful, right?
Mhm.
So I think it serves, because it's her delivering it, because it's such an incredible story. I actually really enjoyed it.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Chris, that at times it felt a little like almost black and white. Like, this is how it goes. This is what you need to do. And like, that's what you need to do. There isn't
Yeah.
another route or option. This is it. Like, very directive and kind of
Yes.
cutthroat that way. Which I was a little bit surprised and shocked, especially, but again, given the context. When was this written, Ryan? Maybe I should go get I have a hard copy.
It's at the age of 90, so probably a couple of years ago, so fairly recently.
It is a more recent book, because I'm just, based on all the like trauma-informed work that's happening out there, and the trauma resources, and, but yeah, I appreciate her messaging. I thought she did a good job at like interweaving storytelling with the content that she wanted to cover, so the principles. But I also echo Ryan that I feel like each of these chapters could have had another 20, 30 pages breaking down more that the concept, or like a bit more meat behind what she was saying.
Yeah.
Opposed to it being a story and then like this one nugget of like, here's how you need to change it. I did like that at the end of each chapter, she has, for those who haven't read it, she has 3 activities that you could do to break that, like that habit that she's talking about. Oh, Joanna so September of 2020, quite recently is when this book was written.
Release.
Yeah. It's not research heavy, very different from the last book we read. She doesn't talk about a lot of the research behind it. She just kind of jumps right in there in a kind of a pointed, direct way.
And very lived experience and reflection of other clients. I'm also a sucker for a good trauma story. Those are like, I just want to read all the trauma stories. So the fact that this is a trauma survivor writing about other people's trauma stories,
Sure,
like in her chapters, like I flew through it, and in a good way, not like in a ho-hum way. Like, I wanted to pick it up. I wanted to read it. It was engaging for me. Sure, all the principles were quite similar, but it's always good to hear how other people are presenting the principles.
Yeah. It was real, it was raw, and I liked how she was pretty forthcoming in terms of her challenges dealing with what she went through, how she kind of kept it in and didn't want to address it. So I think there are some powerful messages there, the importance of catharsis and getting it out, and connection and moving forward, and again find that meaning and purpose. But I really want to know what Joanna thinks.
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, I'm kind of on the boat of liking it. I don't know. I think it was, well, I don't know if it was the listener or reading to it a little bit faster than usual, but it was very like, yeah, just very direct, or almost very like in your, like, I don't know, Chris, you read it faster too, but I was like, is this how it sounds if it's slower, or is it really just, yeah, very direct, very kind of just, I don't know. It surprised me a little bit sometimes with some of the things, how straightforward they would be said. I liked how it pulled in her own experience. I like how it pulled from clients' experiences, very trauma heavy stuff. And I liked how each chapter ended with some things that you can do at home based on what the chapter was about. Very simple things that you can do depending on the chapter, what was being taught. And I like that. So does it encompass everything about that topic? No. But it's one woman's perspective, and she's been through a lot, and she's heard some stories and helped a lot of people. So it's going to be her approach in terms of finding meaning in a lot of different things. Because even with the grief part there, you know, she did have parts about what I like to tell people is like, you know, time doesn't heal all. Time is only healing if you take time to heal type thing, and kind of sitting with your grief and acknowledging, or even about like feeling guilty about something. There's a difference between guilt and remorse. And I just thought there's a lot of little good tidbits in there about, yeah, food for thought. And even me, who's a lot of these things are familiar, I was like, yeah, I like how she worded that. Or even her directness with clients, which is not an approach I take. I'm like, huh, that was very directive, not something I would do, but look at the outcome. Or maybe some people benefit from that stuff, and or maybe even hearing it will make them think about stuff themselves. So I thought overall, sure, yeah, I think things could have been explained a bit more, but for it packed a punch, whether or not it was a good punch for, you know, I think there'll be some helpful tidbits, but it was very, yeah, punchy. This is very direct. This is what you got to do. Yeah, not necessarily my style, but it's, I think it had some, yeah, for someone who's never heard about that stuff before, I think new ears, I think I would just say they could probably find some stuff, but also check out other books as well to get a better idea, or a broader idea of how to approach some of those topics. Yeah,
I think her purpose of each chapter really came through. Like, she didn't overcomplicate it. It was like, here's a story and here are the things that I want to say, like the one or two things.
Yeah.
Opposed to, so the opposite of Jay Shetty, where it was 10,000 things. It was like, here is one thing, short and simple, boom. And now we move forward. And now it's the next piece. Like, yeah, it was sharp that way. But I feel approachable for someone who, I wonder too, like now that I'm talking out loud about it. So if somebody's been through trauma, we're kind of in that trauma brain where it's, sometimes you're a bit scrambled. I don't know if this book maybe would be helpful for that reason, because it's just to the point, purposeful.
It's almost simplifying it a bit.
Yeah, which makes it digestible for someone who might have experienced trauma, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely the right book for the right person. It's not one that I would recommend to all my clients. There's definitely other self-help books that would be great for that. But yeah, if you're someone who, I think those stories would really resonate with certain clients that we meet, certain folks that we meet, right?
I think if you are someone who's sensitive to shame and blame, I think you're going to have a hard time with this book, especially the audio version of the book, because the narrator for the audiobook comes across as a pretty stern sort of, I don't know. I mean, I guess this is my subjective experience. It's kind of like you ought to do this, you know, there's something like you're doing something wrong and let me fix it for you. And you know, if you've got any sort of sensitivity to that, I think at least maybe just read it instead of listen to it, because I think kind of triggers some of that stuff
I think that was a little bit in the book too. There were parts that came across like a finger wag.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, yeah, yeah. I also noticed through reading the book, something did irk me, which was when, like, I understand that we want it to be her voice, the author's voice, the author's narrative, and we want that to shine through. But I found the little snippets where she would, like, it was a quote of something she said, and she would start with the word honey, da 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 da, with her piece of advice. It irked me. So that probably says more about me than it says about her. But like, it would be fine. Like, reading it, it almost didn't fit with the author's voice to me, even though I know that's probably her voice. That's probably how she speaks to clients. But then the rest of the book didn't have that jargon or that slang in it, and it kind of threw me off sometimes.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. Yeah, I guess I missed the
honeys
Audible one. Yeah, because
Wasn't
you're right,
very
Ryan.
often.
Yeah, just that this author or the narrator is just very, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Yeah, you said it's stern, I guess, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Very
A little
interesting.
dramatic.
Very dramatic, or very just, you're like, oh, like, whoa, like, I don't know. Very like teacherly or yeah, disciplinary a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's yeah, I always caution people, like, some of her ideas, again, there's underlying messages that I think she's trying to get across, and some of her examples shouldn't be taken literally. Like, she's sometimes hits on some heavy topics. Like, she introduces very quickly a situation, for instance, with a narcissistic cheating husband, and she suggests that the wife needs to look at her fear and what, do some work herself, because she was having a hard time dealing with it, right? So
yeah, she said,
yeah, every situation has to be
relationship. Yeah,
every situation has to be approached, every situation, or like, in a unique way, and there's factors that are unique to that experience. So but again, the underlying principles, I think she did a decent job of conveying those. Like, you gotta choose your attitude. Don't take on other people's stuff. You gotta find a way to navigate through these difficulties and kind of recreate your life. And I liked how perfectly imperfect she was. Like, some stories of her being very stubborn, almost to the point of causing herself quite a bit of harm, right? So I think she was kind of open, genuine about her difficulties and challenges and her mistakes too.
I agree. I think there's a lot here. But hey, I don't mind being the dissenting voice and saying, I'm not reading it again. I might read her other book.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
I still absolutely want to read The Choice.
Yeah.
And see what that's about. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. The very confident, or her thing that she says, or it could come across just so straightforward, that I wonder what it'd be like to hear that actually in her counseling room, or to just so matter of fact, right? Nope, this is what you got to do. And who knows how she actually approaches it. But yeah, I would just, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by it, but it might not be everyone's style.
For lack of a better, like, she didn't bring up this phrase or concept in her book, but I think that's is kind of what she was getting at, but a sense of radical acceptance towards your past and your current situation. So radical acceptance for listeners is like accepting the situation for what it is, and sometimes that means it's shitty, like it's awful, it's bad, you might not feel good, but these are the cards that were dealt, this is what you're facing, and being able to like radically accept that and trying to move forward from it, opposed to dwelling or being stuck in it.
And also, like, feeling bad for the people who are causing harm. A couple of common themes there from the previous book we read in terms of hatred and racism. But even like, she actually danced for the angel of death. Mengele. I forget how you pronounce his last name. But towards the end, she said, I actually felt sorry for him because I was free. I could choose the thoughts that are in my mind. Where for him, there's a lot going on there, a lot of trauma. And so just that level of compassion, I thought was pretty powerful.
And being able to put distance, right, between yourself and what's happening, to know it's not about you.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the things that are happening in those moments that are traumatizing aren't actually about you. It's unfortunately about them and whatever's happened there, and putting that distance, right?
Yeah. Like, don't take that on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. What did you think of how she talked about just the extreme catharsis, like getting it out, yelling, screaming?
Yeah. She
How
talked about
she
going into your car and
yells and screams at clients sometimes. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. And with clients, right? She'll
With
yell
clients.
with clients.
Yeah.
So they'll both kind of do the catharsis thing in her office sometimes, or she talks about doing that in your car or wherever, letting it out.
Yeah. So the anger, there's a lot of anger that she dealt with after, right? And again, she wouldn't talk about it. She neglected it. It came out in pretty extreme ways. So definitely quite the journey that she was on.
She says you have to heal in order to feel. No, feel is in order to heal, right? So whatever those feelings are, whether it's sadness and tears or anger, you gotta get in touch with all that stuff and let it out in order to be able to heal it. You know, a lot of people try to go a very cognitive route towards healing and just moving past and brushing something aside, but she's a big proponent of getting in touch with those feelings, even in her office.
Yeah.
Scream it out.
You must have good soundproofing. That wouldn't work in our offices.
Oh man, nope.
Chris, Brooke, and I, for listeners, work in the same office, and that would not work. That'd be pretty well these days. There's not many of us in there, but
but it's not tightly soundproofed. Like you can hear muffling, but not what people are saying.
Yeah.
So if somebody were screaming, you would be able to probably hear that.
Yeah. So I got a quote here. She said, "I can't say that everything happens for a reason, but I can say that pain, hardship, and suffering are the gifts that help us grow and learn and become who we are meant to be." So very kind of Viktor Frankl-esque, very existential. Another thing I took note of was I liked how she talked about writing. If you're upset with someone and trying to forgive, then write them a letter. And of course, that is nothing new. But the second letter I thought was kind of interesting. So write a second letter, and this is, of course, this letter you don't have to send the person, but thanking them, being grateful for what you've learned about yourself since, or the gifts that come from that hardship, right? So again, a lot of appreciation and gratitude, ultimately growth.
And that would be very, very hard for a lot of people to do.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Like not staying in it, right? Like not letting it perpetuate out and staying in. Well, I think she called it victimhood or being a victim, depending on the situation. But just choosing to move forward and not let that control your moving forward. But easier said than done. But
but sharing kind of a popular idea about forgiveness and the letting go. And if you're angry and holding a grudge, then that's really only hurting you. And I don't know if she mentioned it in the book or in the TED Talk, but she talked about how, she didn't want to continue to be angry with Hitler because she didn't want to give him that gift of kind of holding her under control, even past his death, so she let go of her anger even there because she felt like she didn't want to keep suffering from crimes that he committed.
Yeah. So she refers to this as these mental prisons, right? That kind of include, I think it's 12 of them, but avoidance, rigidity, chronic anger, and irritation, fear, hopelessness. So she kind of delves into each one and gives a few examples and is very direct in terms of how to, manage that, how to deal with it.
Another nugget, and one of the nuggets I did appreciate her how she phrased it was about resistance, and how when you feel someone's being resistant, really that's because they're not doing what you want them to do. Like it's actually a control issue for you. It's not that they're being resistant, is that you're feeling controlling and they're not doing what you want. I think that was her in there somewhere, but I kind of liked how she said that, like, and how many times as therapists we're like, this client's really resistant. I'm like, Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, true.
Maybe
That's
it's
a
on
good point.
us.
Or even, yeah, the idea that we all, like, grief is just everyday living, like our expectations of the world not meeting, and like when things don't go our way, there's grief in subtle ways, right? Or if conversations or certain relationships, or I don't know, it
Yeah.
was just more of a widespread concept than I'd really ever considered it.
Well, Joe, she said all therapy is grief work.
There you go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
She really focused on grief, expanded on the concept of grief.
You know, I'm reflecting on this talk here, this discussion. You guys are raising all these great points that she made, and I'm agreeing with them and recalling all of these. And I'm thinking, I think I was so put off by the delivery that it made it hard for me to hear all these great points.
Maybe.
Process versus contents. I mean, the process is so abrasive and directive, and like I said, blaming and shaming. It was hard for me to take in maybe some of these really good concepts she had.
Well, I think it's also, it could be like the three of you this round, three of you did the audio. I was the only one that read it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's a big piece of this for me. I didn't hear the tone. Who narrated the audiobook? It wasn't her.
No, it wasn't her.
There's a lady named Tova Feldsha.
Oh yeah, Tova. No, I'm joking. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't know who it is.
I didn't mean that.
Right.
Yeah, one other nugget I just wanted to say was just about the guilt versus remorse thing. I think I hear from clients so much about feeling guilty for things and taking on that, ownership, or I did something wrong, whereas instead, she says, you can be remorseful for how something turned out or how your actions impacted someone, or maybe what you could have done. But it's different. Like, make peace with those things that you feel remorseful for, but the guilt is something else completely different. And I don't know. I thought that was really interesting. And even the what ifs that plague people, especially. And it's just almost consider it as, if I knew the information I did know back then, maybe I would have done something different, but almost, not staying in that what if place. I just thought she had some good little food for thoughts.
She actually said it was easier for her mental wellness, her mental health, to pray for the Nazis and turn her hatred into pity, which is kind of crazy. So she had to make these mental shifts when she was there. And talk about kind of guided imagery as well. Picturing her, she said that so many things are happening within their mind, so many positive things are happening that help them get through those moments, right? Thinking of loved ones, for instance, or moments that they shared together, just to get through the day.
Or visualizing her boyfriend at the time and like having a picnic together, and so just kind of daydreaming or fantasizing about positive things or moments, so that she could escape that moment, right? Like, so I mean, zoning out, dissociation, daydreaming, it was all very helpful and needed for her in that moment. A very powerful one too was right at the end, regarding, a choice, but it was about the cannibalism that broke out in the concentration camp. And as she was lying on a body of corpses, delusional from hunger, and cannibalism was breaking out, and she really didn't want to have to eat human flesh. She said there was a little voice inside her head that said, you can eat the grass.
Pick your blade.
Pick your blade, you can eat the grass. And in that moment, being able to, like, there is still something in your control.
Yeah, it's true.
When you feel like there's absolutely nothing left in your control, there is something.
Yeah, it's true. She also leaves us with something to ponder too, but I'm not sure how far in it was, but there's a little bit of Nazi in all of us, meaning that there can be some hatred and fear that is nurtured by those around us. So she a big proponent, and again, it's not necessarily a new idea that you're not born hating, you're not born with hatred and fear. You learn that from those around you. And And she talked a lot about how it's so important to talk about what happened to her and talk to 1.1 million Jewish people that died. Because if you don't, then history can repeat itself, right? So she said that she was talking to, I think it was a lecture hall of college students, and she asked who's heard of Auschwitz, and only 4 or 5 people put their hands up, right? So that kind of scared her a bit.
That blew my mind.
So the extremism, she said, the extremism, you got to be careful. You got to have dialogue, and we got to remember the atrocities that happened.
Yeah. And but on that note, I think like in regards to Auschwitz and everything that happened there, like just genocide, and yes, all of that we need to remember. We also need to remember what has happened to other minority groups and how they have been treated, Black communities, and up in Canada recently, the Indigenous folks. So we had residential schools up here. Indigenous children were taken from their families and forced to go into a school, and all of their heritage was stripped from them. So they were tattooed with numbers, I think, as well, I'm pretty sure. And their names were changed, and it was run by the churches. Yeah, they shaved their heads, made them wear uniforms. And so recently at one of the schools that had closed down just this past week, they found an unmarked grave, a mass grave with 215 bodies. So this week has been like a bit of a week of mourning for people up here, and awareness and education. But there's a huge history there that we really haven't even scratched the surface, I don't think, for Canada and our Black community as well. It's not, there isn't a lot of Black history or Indigenous history that's shared about what's happened with those people. So Ryan, many maybe podcasts ago, you mentioned like shame, and one of the best ways to fight shame is to put a light on it.
Bring it into the light. Yeah.
You have to bring it into the light. And I think we need to do that with, we have to own up to our histories, and we have to put a light on it.
Agreed. So. Agreed. That's certainly, as you know as well, we're talking about this, that's certainly a lot of what's been happening in the States since a year ago. Last June was when a lot of the protests were going on, and people were marching and trying to make it clear that people of color are not to be treated differently, and they have been. And let's pay attention to that, you know? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very important messages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of hatred for sure. So trying to create some dialogue, and in our last book talked about focusing on the individual, not their views, and maybe developing some rapport and trying to shift some of that systematic hate.
So ratings for this book.
I was wondering.
Okay. I went first before. You guys go. Your rating.
My rating.
I think I would give it a 6. Maybe a 5. 5.5. 5.75. Somewhere in there. Because I'm also trying to think like, okay, in the scheme of things, if I were to plunk this in books of other books, I think that it was, in summary, it's an approachable book. You can pick it up and read it. It's probably going to keep your attention, but it is quite direct, which might turn some people off. And there isn't a lot of breadth behind the principles that she's providing, but there are nuggets that you take away. So I think it's a good starter book, but I don't think it's like mind-blowing great. So it kept me engaged. I wanted to read it. Lots of good nuggets, but yeah, still, yeah. So like an average to slightly better than average book for self-help.
Nicely put, Brooke.
Sibo.
Me? I would go higher, 7.8.
Whoa!
I think it's what I like about it is there's so many self-help books out there that kind of rehash the same kind of stuff over and over and over again. So maybe she does as well. She introduces these principles, but my goodness, this is Edith Eger. And as the book rolled on, I felt it kind of worked. So again, right book for the right person. I wouldn't suggest it for everybody, but I think it could be very, very impactful for that person. I think there's great little nuggets of information in there, and a profound kind of some profound takeaways that again, we get to pick our thoughts, we can pick our attitudes. She felt that the Nazis were actually more in prison than she was. She found a way to survive that. And if she can survive that, if she can rise from the ashes like a phoenix, I think she actually said this, then maybe so can we. So I think it's powerful stuff, very, very powerful stuff. And it was an honor to read it. And yeah, if the right client comes around, I'd definitely recommend that.
Nice. Yeah, my first number that came to mind for me was a 7. I think that it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, very succinct. Very direct about different things, but she has her own history. She brings up client cases, and she ends with some different tips and things. So I think it's either going to really work for someone or not. And I just thought it had everything in it, so I thought it was good.
Very nice. I will give it I'm going to split the score here. I'm going to give it a 6 for content, for the information that was actually in there. You guys reminded me of it. I guess I read it a few weeks ago. So now that you're reminding me of these things, I think there's some good content in there, good principles. I'm down with that, but I'm going to give it a 3 for delivery, because I think it's the way that it's delivered is I think it will appeal to some people who want or need to be kind of smacked in the face. But I think for people, particularly trauma survivors, this is going to be a tough swallow. So that's where I come.
So the average score is 4?
4.5.
4.5.
Yeah. Yes.
We're all over the map with this one.
We are.
That's good.
That is good. A little bit of variety, you know? It's no fun if we're all in agreement all the time, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Well, none of us know what to expect with this next book.
We really don't.
We don't have a clue.
Mm-mm.
Maybe some listeners will have read it, maybe not, but we're gonna read it, and we'll tell you what we think of it in 5 weeks or whatever that is. And it is Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and the book is Black Swan. Right?
Indeed.
Give a little blurb about it.
Oh, I'll have to find the blurb again.
Just to give some
kind of context.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't have Googled it because the movie came up, which I really enjoy the movie.
But this is not.
This is not related to the movie. It's not the movie.
No.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else is looking it up.
No, just waiting for you.
Oh, great.
A Black Swan is a highly improbable event with 3 principal characteristics. It is unpredictable, it carries a massive impact, and after the fact, we concoct an explanation that makes it appear less random and more predictable than it was. The astonishing success of Google was a black swan. So was 9/11. For Taleb, black swans underlie almost everything about our world, from the rise of religions to events in our own personal lives. Why do we not acknowledge the phenomenon of black swans until after they occur? Part of the answer is that humans are hardwired to learn specifics when they should be focused on generalities. We focus on things we already know, and time again fail to take into consideration what we don't know. So that we're unable to truly estimate opportunities, and we're too vulnerable to impulse to simplify, narrate, and categorize. Anyway, that's a bit of it. So this is this idea of how we really process things cognitively, you know?
Yeah, some hindsight biased in there. Like I knew it all along, right? When I look back, oh, I would have seen the signs, or of course that, like, I'm assuming that's a little bit of what it was, right? Like kind of trying to make sense of these things that are probably don't have much sense to them.
Yeah. The first time I heard about this bookstore that was selling books online, I was like, maybe they're gonna. I like going to the bookstore. I worked at a bookstore at the time, I think. So, it's a little earlier than that. But this bookstore, they're selling books online. Yeah, that's Amazon. So that crazy little idea became something a lot bigger than we thought. As did Google and a lot of other things. So I'll be interested to see how that relates to our personal lives and how we might be not seeing the forest for the trees. So it'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious.
Yes. Yeah. Well, which one of us will be the one who doesn't like it this time? I can't predict. Oh, Joe already
signing up.
I was like, sure.
Joe already thinks so. That's great.
Yeah.
So
sounds interesting.
Yeah. So we'll order it and read it or download it or whatever we're going to do, and we'll dive into that book next.
Perfect.
Well, all right, you guys. That's it for tonight. This was a lot of fun.
We'll close that book.
We will close that book for now, but we'll be back, right? And so please like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a friend or two. And
or three.
And pick up Black Swan. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.